Welcome to Ask the Attorney, brought to you by the Law Office of Chris Dostotch.
Hello and welcome. I am Stacy Campbell and we are ready to take your questions. The number to call is 698-3742. You can begin calling right now. Our attorney this evening is Chris Dostotch, a familiar face on this program. Chris is a personal injury lawyer with a practice on North Knoxville here in Peoria. Hello, Chris, and welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And I have to tell you, every time I do one of these shows, the next day people always tell me how much they enjoy you.
Well, that's very good.
So that's good.
Better than the reverse
That's
comments,
right, that's right.
And
Well,
I enjoy doing the show, too.
I think that your genuine interest in helping people to avoid kind of some of the things that you see in your cases shines through, and that's good. And I know that you do have a desire and a passion to educate people
Yes.
to avoid some of the things that you see. And so tonight, we are going to be talking about a very popular topic, workers' compensation. But we also want to talk about personal injury because you
Right.
also do that. And there are a lot of differences between those two cases. And you say people kind of get confused between the two.
Very much so. They don't understand. Work comp's a much different system than personal injury. People think they're the same, so they expect the same benefits.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be helpful maybe to kind of outline how they are different so people can understand the two systems.
Yeah, and so you have listed some very basic differences between these two types of cases, so let's
Right.
go over some of them. I know that personal injury is a court case, and workers' comp you work with an arbitrator. What does that all mean?
Right. So if you're in an auto accident, you fall down somewhere, that goes to the circuit court down in Peoria on Main and Jefferson. You got jury, a judge, common law, regular court system. Workers' compensation is administrative law, so they're arbitrators appointed by the governor. They act as judges, but you're in a kind of a quasi-judicial system.
Okay.
There's no discovery, so some rules of evidence apply. It's a different type of system.
All right.
So, because a lot of people expect there to be a where's my
Yeah.
jury?
I
No
didn't
jury in
realize
work
that.
comp, just workers. They're almost all of them, but one are lawyers. Now, before, arbitrators didn't even have to be lawyers, but I think all of them but one now are lawyers.
Okay. Another difference, fault versus no fault or exclusive remedy. And we should mention on these slides that you're seeing, on the left-hand side is personal injury, on the right-hand side is workers'
Right,
comp.
and I'll run down the rest of these. So with fault, in a negligence case, personal injury, you have to show somebody was negligent,
Okay.
meaning they didn't act as a reasonable person would. Work comp is a no-fault system. So whether it's your fault, the employer's fault, it doesn't matter. If you're hurt at work and there's some other rules, it's a work case. But for an auto accident, just getting injured isn't enough.
Okay.
In the car, you have to show it's due to someone else's negligence.
Okay.
And then that leads into this next one where I was talking about negligence and personal injury. In workers' compensation, you have to show you're in the course of your employment. You're
Okay.
working, you know,
Right.
you're on a trip for work, you're walking into work, in the course of employment, and it arises out of employment. So a lot of people think just because I got hurt at work, or, you know, for example, I've had people who've had a heart attack at work. If the work isn't a causative factor, or you're not doing a work activity that spurs what happened, it's not a case.
So what if something like you're at work and you're on your lunch break and you're taking a walk around, you know, your work campus during your lunch hour and you get hurt? Would that be a workers' comp?
Because you're on the clock, you're in
Okay.
the course of your employment,
Okay.
you're on your employer's premises.
All right.
So if there's some type of defective condition, or it's called the comfort doctrine. So if you're going to get a cup of coffee, going to use the restroom, and you get hurt during the scope of doing those types of things, they're all encompassed within what we would consider the workday.
Okay.
And I think the other thing we had on this is payouts at the end versus timely payments of medical bills and wages only. In a personal injury case, we talked before, where you don't get paid till the end.
Okay.
So if you're off work or you don't have insurance, your bills are not getting paid until you sign on the dotted line. It could cause a lot of financial stress. In work comp, if it's an accepted case, you get wages and medical bills as you go along.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Which is, you know, obviously eases the burden of being off work.
Well, yeah.
And getting access to medical care.
Definitely, yeah. We do have some questions coming in, and remember, you can call 698-3742 if you've got some questions for Chris. He's ready to take your calls. This is from Steve. I was injured at work. I fell last week. Tomorrow I have a meeting with my boss. Am I required to sign anything or fill out an accident report?
Okay, well, the law does not require you to fill out or sign anything. That's clear in a work situation. Sometimes employers might have rules, or you might have a union or a contract where you have to do certain things as part of your employment situation. So you'd have to check those rules, but the law doesn't require it. Now, practically speaking, if you refuse to fill out an accident report, and you refuse to sign things, you know, you're going to create some tension at the workplace. So, you know, you have to, I think, use common sense.
Right.
I would put as little detail as possible. I would sign or do as little as you can, because anything you sign, you have to account for. And it's not that sometimes somebody would change their story, but sometimes you don't know what's important about a case. So you may want to talk to a lawyer before you do it.
Can you say to your boss, you know, I'm fine to sign this, but can you give me a day?
Yes.
And then you can contact
That is certainly reasonable. You can talk to a lawyer before you go in, because they do. If you want them to pay, you got to tell them what happened.
Yeah.
You got to report how it went. So I think you have to use some reason, but just remember that later that document can become, you know, evidence for or against your case.
Always good to consult an attorney, because I know we've talked about this topic many times, and it's becoming tougher and tougher to win these cases. And a lot of times it has to do with things that you've done before consulting an attorney.
Right, and in that situation, the accident happened last week. The person's calling in today. You know, you have time, even before your meeting, to at least talk to someone beforehand. Because again, sometimes you don't understand why certain things are important when you report a work accident and what makes it a case versus not. And if you leave out something that happened and then later add it, then you're going to be subject to, you know, did that really happen? Are you trying to... So I think that first report is always important.
Okay, we've got time for one more question before we take a break. This is from Debbie. I was in an auto accident. I don't want to hire a lawyer, and I'm working on settling my case. I missed 21 weeks of work due to my injury. I am a salesperson, so I work on commission and wages. Progressive wants my tax returns for the last few years. Do I have to give them my taxes?
Okay, yes. Unlike... our president, you don't have to turn out, you do have to turn over your tax returns here. So if you're in an injury case, you do have to, if it's requested. So in this case, the person hasn't filed suit, so you don't have to do anything. It's a free country, and you can say no, and then Progressive says, then we're not going to consider your wage loss. I think in that situation, because they're commission, they probably want to see what the sales history is, how much a person earned. They're not just going to take your word for it.
Correct, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not, in the Illinois Supreme Court has said tax returns for a certain number of years, if you're making a wage loss claim, is relevant. So I would cooperate. If you have questions, call a lawyer. Now, you don't have to give everything, but you have to show what your income is. And if you're in commission, if I do say also, you need sometimes show the year before sales for the same time period and try and come up with an average. Sometimes it's hard to say what sales you would have had, so the documentation is very important.
Okay, very good. Good stuff. As always with Chris Dostach, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with more of your workers' compensation and personal injuries questions. Stick around.
When you're in an auto accident in Illinois, fault matters because Illinois is a fault state.
When the other driver comes to you and says, sorry, it's my fault, I didn't mean to run that stop sign, document that, write it down, because that's an admission against interest. It's admissible in court. Anything you say or the other driver says to each other is not hearsay.
Learn more about your rights at dostachlaw.com. When you're in an auto accident in Illinois, fault matters because Illinois is a fault state.
When the other driver comes to you and says, sorry, it's my fault, I didn't mean to run that stop sign, document that, write it down, because that's an admission against interest. It's admissible in court. Anything you say or the other driver says to each other is not hearsay.
Learn more about your rights at dostscottslaw.com.
And we are back with Chris Dostcott, a personal injury lawyer here in Peoria, taking your questions at 698-3742. You can call right now if you have a question for Chris. So we've been talking about workers' compensation, personal injury, and the differences between the two, because you say most people get confused about them, which we talked about earlier. And so we're going to continue on the theme of differences. Let's talk about differences in damages. And these are differences, I think, in how you're paid and how the amount is calculated?
Correct. What you recover at the end of the case, because every case is somewhat financial in whatever recovery you get. So in a personal injury case, we were talking, you get pain and suffering, loss of a normal life. I would say 80% of people with workers' compensation case says, what about my pain and suffering?
And there is no pain and suffering.
And there is no pain and suffering in a workers' compensation case. That's by law. You do not get a recovery for that. In a personal injury case, you can get future damages. So if you have future medical or wages, a jury or a judge would award and project what that would be. In workers' compensation, if you're going to get a future benefit payment for like weekly pay because you got injured, you make less in a new job due to your injury, or you can no longer work, you can collect a weekly benefit until you're alive, or if it's a wage differential to age 67. And you can get open medical. In open medical,
what does that mean?
It does not mean that like they pay for any bill you turn in.
Shoot.
So no, unfortunately. It means that you still have to prove any treatment down the road is still related to your work case, which can be a major hassle. But you have the right to open medical treatment in the future. A lot of people settle or try to close that out. You know, in a fair way, and that's sometimes a better option. But in a personal injury case, there's no going back. You can't come to the jury in 10 years if you've had another surgery for open medical.
Once it's done, it's done.
Yep. And then finally, in a personal injury case, a jury awards, or a judge, but most of the time it's a jury, whatever they think.
There's no specific formula to figure out.
No, lawyers try and guide a jury and make suggestions on what they could be during the case. But in workers' compensation, the awards are based upon what body part it is. Some body parts are worth more than others. Benefit rates, maximum and minimum rates. And then formulas for permanent disability or wage differential. So there's more of a fixed amount. I mean, there still can be a deviation depending on the seriousness of the injury and many factors, but it's on a fixed formula, whereas in a civil case, one jury might think $20,000 is a lot of money, or $5,000, and another jury could think 60.
Is there caps on those too? I mean, is there like a limit to what they can award?
Caps on just civil jury awards in Illinois. But in workers' compensation there is, because the legislature has passed. That's kind of the trade-off. You get immediate medical and wages, but there's kind of a cap on how much a person can recover. That was the deal made 110 years ago, or whenever we start work comp.
We have some more questions coming in. This is Bob. Driving from my employer, and I was driving from work, I guess, was in an accident. Was not sure if he could have both personal injury and workers' comp case.
That's a good question.
It does sound like a good question.
Some I can answer, some I can't. I'd have to get more factors. You can call in and we can get more detail. First, you can have both. So if you get hurt, like if I'm driving to court and someone runs a red light and I get injured, I have a personal injury case for that. And then I would have a work case because I'm in the course of my employment. I'm going to court, which is a job duty. On the part about driving home, if you're just driving home from work, it's not generally going to be work comp unless you're a traveling employee or you're stopping by the bank or running some type of errand.
So driving to and from work is not necessarily in the course of employment?
90% of the time. There can be, if you're going to a different workplace, it has a lot to do with being a traveling employee. But the one thing you also have to remember, if you recover in a personal injury situation and workers' compensation was paid, then your employer retains the right to get reimbursed from the personal injury case as well.
Really?
So there's a lot of things going on in that question.
Yeah, there is a lot more than I thought. This is from Rob. I was in a car accident while working. I have another attorney. My attorney said I needed to reimburse my insurance company, and I don't know if I got a fair settlement.
All right. Well, the second part's difficult to answer because I don't know what the injury is.
Right.
You know, and I will say one thing about settlements. I've had very few clients, if maybe none, that ever called back and said they're mad for settling. Because in the end, there's some relief in getting the case over.
I would think so.
And, you know, hopefully you have a good lawyer who's giving you good advice and explaining to you why your case is of that value. But again, you're the client, so in the end, you make the decision on whether you settle or not. Your lawyer cannot decide for you, but you should listen to your lawyer. In terms of reimbursing your group insurance, no guaranteed that nobody listening has probably ever read their group insurance policy or the summary plan description, but in it, every policy says if you recover from a third party, you have to reimburse us. But it's a good thing because your group paid less than the full bill. You turned in the full bill and you're only reimbursing on what your group insurance paid, and you should get a discount back on what you're paying back. But you generally have to do that all the time. There are a few exceptions if you don't recover because of the seriousness of your injuries where you can reduce that, but they generally have the right to recover the money.
Okay. I'm just curious, because you know so much about, because you do it all the time. Do you have a majority of workers' comp cases or in personal injury? Is that the majority of what you do?
That's all I do. That's it. I've done that for 25 years, personal injury and workers' compensation, and probably do about 50-50 between the two, a little bit more workers' compensation than personal injury. But that's it. That's my expertise. So don't call me about a will, because I have my own lawyer for a will.
You have your own lawyer. This question is from Jan. I was hurt at work and my family doctor won't see me because she is not allowed to see work comp cases. They said to go to IWIRC, which you're going to have to tell me what that means. What else do you suggest?
Okay. IWIRC is iWorks, which is a occupational health facility, kind of the Unity Point. OSF has their own occupational health. So if it's iWork, that means they probably have a Unity Point family doctor. So I think it's twofold, and this is just my own theory. A lot of doctors don't want to deal with workers' compensation and billing, so it's a way for the doctor to punt. Now, I'm not a big fan of that, and I think if they're your family doctor, they should see you. Because you have a right to go to your own doctor, and it really causes people a hard time because I work, which, you know, I'm not passing judgment or anything, but it is the chosen doctor by the insurance company and by the employer, so you're not picking your own physician. And if you can't go to your family doctor, how do you get in somewhere else to get tests?
It's difficult, yes. That would be hard.
And so I'm not a big fan of that policy of pushing people there personally, and it causes people a lot of trouble. But that's the reality. And so then as a lawyer, when someone comes into me, not only am I trying to get them benefits, I'm trying to find them competent, good medical service and get them access to care. It just makes it more difficult.
We have time for one more question, then we're going to take another break. Can my employer make me go to iWork? I have my own doctor, and I am going to my doctor for my work comp treatment. I think you kind of just answered that question.
The two iWork question. They see a lot of people. In some places, it's in the contract.
Oh, it is.
So you have to know. Then secondly, you can really make your employer mad if you don't go, and they want you to even if you don't have to. Okay, and so you could say, well, I'm not going, I don't want to, and that's fine. You don't have to, but then there may be other issues that you got to deal with. But the way the law is, if there's nothing in a contract and you don't want to go there, you can go wherever you want. You get 2 doctors in every doctor they refer you to, and if you're sent to iWork, that does not count as one of your physician choices.
Okay, all right, great. Good stuff as always. We're talking workers' compensation and personal injury cases. Well, we haven't gotten to the similarities yet, but we are going to get to that. But differences and similarities between the two cases. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Chris Doscotch.
When you're in an auto accident in Illinois, fault matters because Illinois is a fault state.
When the other driver comes to you and says, sorry, it's my fault, I didn't mean to run that stop sign, document that, write it down, because that's an admission against interest. It's admissible in court. Anything you say or the other driver says to each other is not hearsay.
Learn more about your rights at DoScottsLaw.com. When you're in an auto accident in Illinois, fault matters because Illinois is a fault state.
When the other driver comes to you and says, sorry, it's my fault, I didn't mean to run that stop sign, document that, write it down, because that's an admission against interest. It's admissible in court. Anything you say or the other driver says to each other is not hearsay.
Learn more about your rights at DoScottsLaw.com.
And we are back with Chris Doskotch, a personal injury lawyer right here in Peoria. Taking your questions, you can give us a call, 698-3742. Our topic today, the difference between workers' comp claims and personal injury cases. But there are some similarities, so let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the similarities?
First thing I think I've talked about a little bit deals with wages and medical bills. So we talked no pain and suffering in work comp. In work comp, you get disability awards. But in both systems, you can recover for medical bills and your wage loss.
Okay.
Number two, proximate cause.
Yeah,
and
what
I
is that?
use
What does
that
that
word
mean?
because that's what a jury gets instructed on, and that's the law. And proximate cause means that your injury is related to your accident.
Oh, okay. And so in both cases, you have to have proximate
You have to
cause.
prove that in both systems.
That makes sense.
And you generally, I mean, if an anvil falls on your hand and fractures that, I don't need a doctor to say, my hand's fractured from this anvil, you know, Bugs Bunny or whatever. Not. But for the most part, if you twist your knee and you tear a meniscus, you got to have a doctor generally to provide proximate cause or causation opinions in medicine, and that's in both systems. And then the third one, which everyone's in favor of, no one's ever complained. Both systems, tax-free, whatever you recover.
Wow, how did we manage that?
That may change, you know, I'm sure it will someday, but your award in personal injury is tax-free and in workers' compensation, and it's really relevant now, and I do try to remind people of this. Your work comp that you receive weekly is tax-free, and so is any settlement.
How is, because what you're receiving in work comp is kind of wages, right?
But you're getting 2/3.
Oh, okay.
So actually some people are losing because if you're like in a 20% tax bracket and you're getting a 2/3 taken out, you're at, you know, it's unfortunately, and I've advocated for helping the lower part than making the higher part more.
Yeah.
Because in the end, the people who are making $10, $12, $13 an hour, they're getting hurt by the 1/3 deduction. It's tax-free, that's great, but they don't pay that much in taxes.
Right.
Plus, you're not getting your benefits paid out of that, too, and you may have to pay that out of your check.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Out of your
then.
work comp, so that's how it works. So.
Well, let's get to some questions. Here's a question from Bob. If a person is at work emptying the trash and gets stung by a bee and they don't know they are allergic and die because of it, is that a work comp or personal injury?
And these have come up before.
Really?
It would be really fact specific.
Yeah.
But I think if you're at the garbage, and garbage cans do attract bees, and you're in an area where there's a lot of bees, I would say they're going to fight it.
Yeah.
But I think you could win.
Okay.
If you're just walking down the street and get stung by a bee, probably not. You have to show that, I think, in that situation that your work put you at an increased risk of a bee sting.
Oh, okay.
So, like, if you work out in a field, agriculture, and there's a lot of flowers or something, that would be different. If you're just walking down the street, probably not.
Okay. Kim has a question. What is my case worth? I am about done treating with my doctor. I had tennis elbow surgery. I've had that, actually. I am going to be released to return to work with no restrictions. So she's wondering what her case is worth.
All right, so that's going to be disability of an arm. The multiplier is 60% of your wage average from the year before. And they're going to look at your age, your occupation, the full duty release, the type of your work, how you feel at the end. I mean, is it great? Do you have full grip? Because grip is usually the big thing with tennis elbow. Is your grip back to normal? So those are the factors you look at. I mean, I'd have to see your records to give you an opinion. I mean, there's ranges. So it's usually 10 to 15% disability of an arm, probably up towards the 15% disability of an arm, but that's very general. I don't like doing that, but that's kind of a common injury, and that assumes back to work and a very good result.
Okay. Let's get to another question here from Pat. I lost my job due to a work injury and restrictions. I have a new job. My lawyer says there's nothing I can do about losing my health insurance. Can't I recover money for losing the insurance for my family? So they lose health insurance? Well, I guess they lost their job.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose your job, there's no compensation. Like we were talking earlier about with work comp, they pay your disability at the end of the case, so there's no pain and suffering, no loss of normal life. In a personal injury case, if you lose retirement or money's hourly pay for health benefits, you can recover some of that. In workers' compensation, generally, fringe benefits do not come into the equation.
Okay.
They are not a factor, and even though they are a real human factor in workers' comp, there's nothing I can do about that. That would take a change in the law to take that into consideration.
Okay, we have about a minute left, so I'm going to give you one more question that you can answer quickly. I am on work comp and will be for a while. I had serious injuries. I was making near minimum wage. How does raising the minimum wage affect my case?
That's a long answer.
Oh, no.
But it is going to affect your case.
It is.
Potentially.
Okay.
If you can't go back to your job and there's a wage differential, this minimum, because in 5 years, the minimum wage is going to be $15.
Yeah.
So you have to assume that's what you would make if you can get another job. So that is going to be something that is something we're going to have to consider, but it just happened, so I don't know all the angles yet.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how people can get in touch with you if they want to give you a call.
Yep, 309-681-9770, or you can email chris@doscotchlaw.com. Those are the two best ways.
And if anybody has a question about if they wonder if they have a case, it doesn't cost anything to give you a call.
Consultation, call. I'll help you out the best I can. Appointments, consultations are free. We'll get you in right away.
Great. Thanks, Chris. It's always just a pleasure to have you here.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.